Real quick, before we start this podcast episode, I just want to say thank you for tuning into the Marc Colcer podcast. I know you've got a million things that you could be doing right now, and the fact that you're taking time out of your day to watch this podcast episode truly means the world to me, and I just want to say thank you for that. If you'd like to continue to support the podcast, right below this video, if you could hit the subscribe button, and then, hey, if you got some more time and you want to hit the download button, the comment button, the like button, the share button, any of those buttons, it's greatly, greatly appreciated. It helps for other people to find out about the podcast, and it helps for you to be notified about future episodes. So if you guys could take a quick second, hit the subscribe button, I would really appreciate that. Outside of that, this episode and every other episode is brought to you guys by Roast Umber Coffee. As some of you guys know, I co-founded Roast Umber Coffee, and we have the greatest farmers in Guatemala and Honduras and the greatest roaster in Grand Rapids, Michigan, all to bring you guys the greatest cup of coffee possible. So if you'd like to try it out, go to our website, use the coupon code MARC30, and you're going to get 30% off your coffee. Now on to the episode. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Welcome to the Marc Colcer podcast. You know, I think actually the number one comment we're probably going to get right at the beginning here is that you look like Shaun White.
Oh yeah.
Currently, right. as we speak, with the glasses on like that, kind of looks like you're ready to go snowboarding somewhere. And they can't really tell the color of your hair on podcast form, so you're not Shaun White red, but you are. I could definitely see a distant cousin of Shaun White.
All
in this
right.
moment.
Well, if I look like Shaun White, that's dope.
Can you snowboard like Shaun White? That's the real question.
I cannot snowboard like Shaun White, but what I do is akin to a supreme sport. So
there we go.
Yeah,
there we go. So, all right, man. So to start off the podcast, I want to just have you introduce yourself. So who are you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm known on Twitter as Moneyboy0x. I'm the founder of the Solana Money Boys NFT project that minted on Solana early December. So that's my identity.
So you go by 0x.
Yes, sir.
I've been thinking OX this entire time.
No, 0x.
0x. Okay.
I am the first money boy.
Okay. There we go. Okay. So 0x, I got to start saying that. I've been saying in my head OX. So now I got to turn all that around.
That's all good. I mean, 0, whatever one you like most. Yeah.
No. I can't do that because trust me, when I said D-gods, like the gods, because that's how it comes naturally to me, I still get shit for that like months later. Yeah. So no. It is 0x. We're going with that.
All right, no problem.
The other name is out of my brain already. So let's start off with kind of your background and everything like that. Like whatever you want to give. Obviously, you know, we can state the obvious. You're not doxxed. And so I guess let's start with that. Why did you choose to not be doxxed?
Yeah. So the short answer is it's just way cooler not to be doxxed. You know, like you don't have to worry about somebody running up to you on the street and being like, oh, like you're this person. You know what I mean? You can like be who you want to be on the internet, and then you could turn it off and go be who you want to be in real life. And that's a level of like flexibility for somebody who's a creative and an artist that's like really valuable. You don't want to lose that. And so for me, it's like I get to maneuver and be who I really want to be on sort of like, you know, as OX or 0x. And that's really valuable. I don't want to lose that. The other thing is that for me, it's really important that it doesn't matter who you are. Like what matters fundamentally is what you do in the space, right? So like you can be somebody living in a completely different place, you know, whatever gender, background, it doesn't matter. Like what matters is like what you're actually doing in the space. And so that's, you know, that's part of what I love about operating in this space is that you have to look at like what people do, not like what their background is or something like that. So
yeah,
those reasons.
I think that's fair. I think my opinion on doxing has definitely changed over the last 6 months or so, and I think partly because like I'm as doxed as you can be. I think my middle name is on Twitter, right? So like literally everything is out there about me, right? Yeah. My birthday, everything. You can literally find out most things about me. But the I see kind of the rationale for it now, and I see the importance of kind of just being judged by what you're doing for the space, not just like who you are, what you look like, everything like that. So right. I get that, and I believe, to be honest, whether somebody's showing their face or not, when you come onto a podcast like this and people get to hear you speak and everything like that, that says a whole hell of a lot more than just like even somebody going on a Twitter space and stuff like that. Like that's great, but when you show up to a podcast, you had to come out here. You don't live in this area, and so that shows effort effort and everything like that. And then it shows transparency, you coming onto the podcast, talking about your project, and just going through it overall. So I appreciate that.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And by the way, I think every founder has a responsibility to do this.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like not just a responsibility, but it's good for your project, right? Like people want to hear from you directly, right? If you're calling shots and you don't know who's calling shots, like why are you going to like invest in that? Or like, why are you going to like place your bet on that? So I encourage it, you know, I think it's good to do IRL stuff like this.
There we go. So, all right. So let's start off with your NFT journey. So how did you get into NFTs?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a strange story. I originally got into NFTs through the art side. So I got commissioned to do a project on Solana, and I spent like 3 weeks just nonstop, just pencil to iPad, just going crazy on this project. And I got to experience what it was like to be part of an NFT project on Solana back in like October, right? And this was a really special moment for Solana NFTs because this was really like when NFTs were sort of like breaking on the scene on Solana. There's tons of activity. Discords would be like lit up like constantly. And so I got to experience what that was like. And it completely like changed my mind. You know, like previously I'd seen NFTs and I'd been like, I don't understand this. But then I started talking to people in the space and actually contributing to the space. And I was like, this is incredible. And, you know, I just made tons of personal connections. People I don't really know in real life, but who are now like, you know, people I like going to be friends with for the rest of my life. And I was like, I got to build on this chain. You know, like I gotta start my own project on this chain. I gotta like add my own art to this chain. Like I didn't want to feel like somebody else controlled my art. Like I wanted to feel like I had like responsibility over the art that I was creating. And so then I started the Solana Money Boys.
There we go. So is your background then in like drawing and were you the one, I mean, I guess we'll get into it in a second here when we specifically dive into your project, but were you the one who drew the Solana Money Boys?
Every piece of art that you see on the Solana Money Boys as of a week ago was drawn by me.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know that. I probably should have asked you that before we started the podcast, but hey, I'm learning things. So, no, that's really, really cool. So I don't want to get it yet into the inspiration behind the art and everything like that, but that's a question I do have for you, but that's cool. I didn't know that you were the artist for the project. So, that's really, really cool. So once you had that first original project that you did the artistry for and everything like that, when you first started to kind of come up with the idea of Solana Money Boys, do you have a background in like analytics and data and things like that? Or do you have like a team of people that have that background? Because Solana Money Boys, and we'll obviously dive deep into the project in a second, but it is data driven. So where did your inspiration for that come from?
So originally I was sort of like an artist that somehow figured out how to code. I got my bachelor's in data science, and then I started working at Web2 startups as a software engineer. So I've sort of always had the software side of me, the data analytics side of me, and the art side. And this was my first time where I actually got to like combine those two things. I pretty much thought like as of a year ago that I would never draw again. You know, like I used to love drawing, all I did when I was a kid. And then it was just like, okay, now I got to do like the engineering and software engineering. And like, how do I basically like combine these two things that I really love? And this is the first like startup or sort of enterprise where it's both about the art and it's about the engineering. In fact, actually, it's about combining the two things to build something that's never been done before. So yeah, that's part of why I love the space. I always thought that like, you know, normally you'd have to like just do the thing that you studied. But to actually do something that you studied and to do the creative side of you, it's something special.
There we go. So, all right. So, I mean, I guess let's just start diving into Solana Money Boys. So how did you guys come up with the idea of it to begin with? Like, was your original goal the same goal that you have now, or kind of how has that changed?
So originally we just sort of saw like what was going on in the space, and we said like, we could do better from an artistic point of view, right? Like I love like pixels. Pixels are like great. I think they work well for a lot of projects. But at that point, when we were minting, almost everything was a pixel. There wasn't really like a psychedelic / like simple human PFP that was done, right? And then the other piece of that is Solana is sort of like one of the best places to do transactions really cheaply and really easily, right? And so I was looking both at sort of like what was the vision behind the blockchain, right? It's like cheap, easy transactions, no gas fees. and what's going on artistically in the space with NFTs, and how can we like basically do the best art and riff on what this blockchain is really about. And there was Solana Money Boys.
There we go.
Yeah.
And so how have your goals changed with the project, I guess, as you've gone further into it? Because you guys minted in December, right?
Yeah.
Which was kind of a very bearish time with NFTs. And so when you guys were minting, what were your thought processes then? Were you nervous kind of about the market at that point? Because the market was not too hot in December.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. When you're minting an NFT project, you're not worried about like anything else but making sure the mint runs smooth. People get their NFTs, people are happy, right? It was really like a week after the mint when we realized like, holy shit, we have some like incredible talent in our Discord. We have a crazy community, you know, like now we have capital, like let's build something that's going to be really, really useful. And so I think that like when you're just kind of starting off, you can sort of get quick momentum wins, you know, because your mint goes well or something else goes well. And so when you're kind of like riding that hype wave, all you're thinking about is like making sure that like things keep going smoothly. And then it was like a week or two after our mint when we like really buckled in and said, all right, like what are we going to be about? You know what I mean? It's not going to be just the simple, what every other project is going to do. Like, obviously that's not what we're here to do. So it was kind of a transition between those two states of mind where like when you're minting, you're just thinking about making sure everything goes smoothly. And then you have a moment to actually reflect and think like, okay, what do we want to do?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the difference between minting then and minting now, right? Because I think now people kind of expect you to know that already, right?
Yeah.
They expect you to have that already planned out, things like that. Back then, I felt like the majority of mints weren't selling out, and so there were a lot of projects that just kind of were like, well, let's just kind of see how this goes, and then and now I think and we talked about it before we got on the podcast, but the expectations that people have now are a little bit higher than they were back then, and so the fact that you guys are doing as well as you have, I think is a testament to the work that you guys have put in, because that was such a bearish time, and most projects I feel like that minted in November or December aren't around anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it was scary for a moment. I'm not going to lie. Like, we dropped below our mint price for, like, weeks. And people, like, basically just wrote us off. They're like, all right, like, I paper-handed my money boy. Like, that project's going to zero, right? And, like, there was periods where I, like, just shut off the Discord and been like, no, we're just going to keep building. Like, we're literally just going to keep building. And people came to me and been like, yo, what happened? Yeah. You know, like, what happened? It's like, we just put our heads down. And we just kept going. Like, we weren't going to give up. Like, that was never on the table for us. It never will be on the table for us. And so it was just a heads down moment. And we're going to keep having heads down moments. So, yeah, I mean, and I encourage other founders too. Like, if things aren't going exactly the way you planned, like, just like figure out, this is like a moment of opportunity for you to figure out like what you want to do. And it could be the thing that takes you to the next level. So, yeah, I mean, we were just kind of heads down. There's times where you just kind of tune out the market. You know, it's like you just turn it off for a second. And then you're like, all right, I'm going to figure out what we're actually going to do now.
Yeah, and I feel like in general, you know, when you first put out your mint, you have obviously an excess of cash that comes in. Yeah. And so for me, the way I look at that is like, no matter what, even if your floor drops to 0.02, right, you still have that excess of cash that's sitting there. So do something with it and show that you can do something with that to innovate in the space and things like that. Because even if your floor does drop down to 0.02, if you're doing dope shit, that floor is going to rise. Like there's no doubt that if you're doing things in this space, people will recognize that. People will see your passion. People will see that you're builders and things like that. And I think a lot of projects, you know, we've talked about it to nauseum, but there's so many rugs back in like October, November, December. And so when people are actually building, people can see that. And all people want is the transparency of knowing what you're doing, right?
Right.
So seeing that you're actually, you know, working on the project, being vocal in the announcements, being vocal in the Discord that you guys are working towards things, that builds trust and obviously the community, and that's what's going to keep that project from going to zero, is people saying, hey, no matter what, I believe in these guys or these women or whoever's involved with it to figure it out, right? And I think that's obviously a testament to you guys and the work that you've put in, that you minted during a very difficult time. You went below mint, and now you're sitting here today. What are we at today? Like 18, 19?
I haven't checked recently. Somewhere in that range.
Somewhere in that range. Somewhere in that range. So, I mean, it's once again, it's a testament to you guys. So let's go back kind of to that time period. So you guys sell out your mint, and then you guys start to dip below your mint price. What was that process, the creative process like of figuring out, okay, how do we have relevance in this space? Like, what do we need to do to maintain relevance? What do we need to do to build in this space? What do we need to do to innovate in this space? How did those conversations look?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of just sat down as a team. We said, like, look, what do people want? You know, like, what do the people in our community want? You know, and like, how can we best deliver that for them, right? Like, day one in our Discord, the first announcement was like, we're here to deliver value to our holders. You know, like, if you get a money boy, basically we work for you. That's like straight up, you know what I mean? So we just sat down and we had a bunch of conversations around what we thought would be the most useful thing that we could do, and like how we could get our community excited about our project again, you know? And then like, these are like very stone, like just sobering conversations where you get to the root of like why people are in your project and like what a great project would look like for those people, right? And the people in our community are like very intense about building things on Solana. They want to see the space as a whole grow, right? And they want to see projects do things that other projects have never done before, right? You don't necessarily mint an NFT so that you can just like sit on it and get a 5% return. Like you should probably just like get it like and you should probably just be in normal stocks at that point or something like that.
But not financial advice.
Not financial advice. Thank you very much. But I'm just saying, you mint an NFT to be part of like something that's going to be large in the future and that has like explosive potential, right? And so we wanted to basically deliver something for people that said like, look, we're operating like a really, really fast moving space. And there's a lot of opportunity in this space, and we're pretty early, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, we're going to just like take a bunch of different moonshots, and we're going to do a bunch of different things that we think are like innovative and truly valuable for the space. And obviously we'll get into like what those specifics look like. But that was sort of the underlying feeling. It's like, we're not here to sort of like just do the status quo. We're not looking over our shoulder being like, oh, you know, you're doing that, let's just do that. Like, we're actually here to be like our own NFT project on Solana that is known for something that no other NFT project is known for. That, I think, was like the mental shift that we had to make, was like, we're just not worried about what other projects are doing. Like, we want to do something that's never been done before. So that's it, yeah.
So how did you put together your team from there? Because one of the big things I think sometimes is like, we use the word innovation a lot in this, right? Like, you need to innovate. You need to do things that have never been done in this space, right? Yeah. But the hard thing about innovating and the hard thing about doing things that have never been done in the space before is that they've never been done.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of start coming up with those ideas and whatnot? And like, obviously your team plays a massive role in that. So how did you guys put together the team that's able to innovate and come up with these ideas?
The first thing you got to figure out is what you want to do, like what your hypothesis is on the space, right? So you're basically running like 20 experiments at any time, right? Frank talks about like the social experiment, right? That's the same thing. It's basically like, okay, you have a hypothesis about how the space is going to move, like what pops, what people care about, right? And then you figure out, okay, there's like 5 different things I think, or we think is going to actually like move the needle for us. And what are the sort of like things that we can start doing to start testing those hypotheses today, right? And then you sort of like outline exactly what needs to be done to test those hypotheses, and then you build like you find the best people to actually go off and execute on that. And so we're always running like 5 different experiments. I mean, there's a sort of like whole vision around where those experiments lead and like sort of the prevailing hypothesis, but you're always running like 5 to 10 different experiments with separate operators. And you have like sort of specific objectives where you say like, this is working and this is not working, right? Because you got to know when to like stop and when to keep going. And that's all about like running basically an experimental process, right? You have a hypothesis, you have your inputs, and then you see what happens, right? And then you decide whether to re-up or focus somewhere else. So that's sort of like the process that we ran through. Is we outlined exactly what we thought was worth doing and the easiest way to test those assumptions. And obviously some things work and some things don't work, right? But it's not like you've run like 5 to 10 experiments for a reason, right? Because you expect 9 out of 10 might not work, but that one thing that does work is going to go crazy, right? And that's just the nature of operating in this space. There's like millions of experiments on Solana that haven't been run yet, blockchain generally, right? Because we're so new here. So why not like run as many experiments as possible in this space? So that's sort of like our philosophy. You know, it's like, that's why it's so important to just like have high output, because you got to assume most of the things aren't going to go exactly to plan.
Right.
And then you got to have like 5 or 10 other things that might. But as long as you have like a sort of like thing that ties the narrative all together, I think that's one of the best ways to operate in this space.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to even like when I was younger watching like Shark Tank, and they would always say when they invest into somebody, they're not investing into the product, they're investing into the founders, because those founders have to be able to pivot and make the right decisions when things things are never going to go perfectly according to plan, right? So even if you had said to me when we started this, oh, we had this super, super elaborate roadmap of we were going to do this, do that, do, you know, whatever. If you have this thing that's like, okay, this is our thing that like people are going to love about us, right? Yeah. And then people don't love you for that, then are you just fucked, or are you going to pivot? Right. You have to pivot. So that's what we're looking for in this space, are people who are able to pivot, people who are able to do things and that are going to lead to other things happening, right? And so, you know, that's like kind of like you said, we're running a shit ton of experiments. We were even talking about this before we started the podcast. Like, I'm running experiments with the podcast to see what do people fuck with, what do people like to hear about, what do people not like to hear about, and things like that. And that's our goal, is to constantly pivot to, okay, this is working, let's lean into that. This isn't working. Why is that not working? Maybe that means we need to make some tweaks, or maybe that means we need to just shelf that idea. But that's the whole part of like being an entrepreneur in life in general, not just in the NFT space, but literally any entrepreneur. You can relate that to anything, is that you can go in with whatever idea, but based off the results, you have to pivot and make moves to lead yourself to prosperity.
Well, that's the point, and that's why it's so important to have a process in place. If you don't have a process for how you sort of operate day to day, and one thing stops working, then you're going to just like completely be like, oh, this is not going to work. Like we should give up, you know? But if you have a process in place that assumes that some things that are not going to work, right? That you're already accounting for that, then if something doesn't work, you're just like, all right, we're just going to keep running the process, you know? Like, we're going to pivot this direction, or we're going to go in this direction. But you must have like a process. Like, you must be procedural about it. Because if you don't, then you're just gonna like basically capitulate at every point. And you know, the most important thing is like keep going and having like a process for knowing, you know, like what's working and what's not working, and be like explicit about that.
Is there something, an idea that you guys have had since you started, where you had to say, okay, hey, this just isn't working?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of our efforts to sort of to create more structure around our DAO have been really difficult. It's really hard currently with the current tooling and everything that's going on to have like a really like functional and healthy DAO. It's just really hard. Like, I haven't seen anyone pull it off really well, because at the end of the day, there's going to be some really hard decisions that need to be made. And if you have like thousands of people debating over it, nothing gets done. And so that was part of the things that we had to be like, okay, we want to have more input, and we want to have like a really functional DAO, but we're just not there yet. So that's one thing where we had to kind of like put our, you know, like slow down on a little bit, because it just wasn't really working.
Yeah, I think that's it's a good thing to obviously get feedback and whatnot, and then when you have feedback coming from too many people and stuff like that, you're right, it can be a point where it's really difficult to make the right decision. Because then, you know, one person's arguing this, and then you got 1,000 voices, and it's hard to, then you just kind of end up doing nothing, right?
Exactly. You don't get anything done.
Right.
You have conflicting feedback and nothing gets done. So at the end of the day, you do need to have I think you need to have a core team that's like executing on a mission.
Yeah.
But I do think eventually there will be better ways to manage. But for now, I don't think we've discovered it yet. At least for us, for a project, we haven't got there yet.
Yeah. And hey, I mean, that's transparency. So love to hear that. So for those who aren't familiar with your project, let's break it down real quick. Can you explain the 3 collections and the utility behind them?
Yeah, so the Solana Money Boys was our OG collection. It was the first thing that got introduced to the space. The Diamond Boys came after that. That was a free airdrop to our holders. And then we had the Money Girls, which was also a free airdrop to our holders. And we haven't announced exactly how all 3 of those are going to come together just yet. But something's cooking on the Moneyland side for how those all 3 unify together and make a cohesive experience. And it's one of the things that I'm most excited about for our project. And sort of the art that's going to be integrated with that as well is super exciting. And I'm glad to also have one of the best artists in the space, Scum, helping deliver that for us. So it's going to feel like having one family. That's all I'm going to say.
Very cool. Very cool. Can you explain more about Moneyland and Moneyplex and how those two kind of integrate together in your ecosystem?
Yeah, let's start with Moneyland. So Moneyland is one of the first interactive maps that any NFT project has attempted before. And it integrates directly with our staking. So gone are the days of like staking on some weird platform that has nothing to do with your PFP project. We're bringing art into staking and we're adding that into the into the Moneyland via your mansion. And so this is going to be an interactive experience for our holders. I'm not going to give too much context around how we're designing it, but it's going to completely change the way our project feels to our holders. We're really creating a world for our holders and adding sort of our staking utility, which is one of the big pieces of our project, into Moneyland. Moneyplex is the homepage for your Solana wallet. We're taking all the data that is important to you about what's going on in your wallet, and we're aggregating it and making it super easy to understand just at a glance. And on top of that, we're taking the information that you get from staking for, DGods, or if you're staking for some other big project and you want to see exactly what you're getting on a daily basis, you can see that on Moneyplex. In addition, we're adding profiles into that. So I can follow you, Marc. We'll be following each other soon.
There we go.
I can see what kind of NFTs you're rocking. I can put in a bid on your NFT and start a DM with you. So I'm super excited, and I'm not even really giving all of what it is because, again, this is sort of like, it's also like going to be an experience as well. But those are kind of the early pieces of alpha. I really think we're going to be building, one of the best experiences for using a wallet, period, on Solana. That's what we want to do with Moneyplex.
Okay, so explain it to me. Let's say I have a Solana Money Boy. Let's say I have a DGod and I've got a Soul God, right?
Yeah.
Let's say I have those 3, right? In a perfect world, how does your application work within that? Let's say I've got staking going on in all 3 of them, right? So walk me through that. In a perfect world, let's say a few months from now, as you guys are rolling out everything that you're doing, what does that look like for me?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, how would you go and check what you're getting on each of your staking platform? You have to individually go to each one, see what the rewards are. If you just open it, if you just connect to Moneyplex, you get to see exactly what you're getting through all 3 on one interface, right? Your homepage for your wallet is how I would describe it. Now, in addition to that, let's say you go buy some other NFT and you want to stake it. You could also stake that on the Moneyplex because the back end for how those staking mechanisms work are built in such a way that you can actually aggregate them and actually implement the functionality on one interface. Now let's go say that you want to see what your friends are buying or what a whale wallet is buying on Solana. You could go try and track down that wallet, or if they're connected to the Moneyplex, you could just follow them and it's linked to their Twitter account and you understand okay, this person is making these trades if they choose to share that. And you have a visual representation of what kind of profile is associated with that wallet. And so now instead of like having this sort of experience where you're navigating from X and Y and Z, you now have like a essentially an aggregated experience where you kind of at a snapshot understand what's going on with this wallet. And it's just easier to navigate. It feels like the homepage of what you're doing in Web3.
So you guys are essentially trying to make data more accessible to people, right? Like you're trying to make it simpler because, yeah, right now it is difficult of, I'm staking on multiple different sites and things like that. It is hard to know, like to have it all, kind of broken down. There's nothing that's really doing that. So you're basically saying we are going to be like the data hub of Solana, where if you want to know what's going on within your wallet, you want to have Solana Money Boy to have access to the cleanest interface possible to have all of your data summed up for you.
Yeah, that's right. And the cool thing too is like right now you have like tons of projects building independent utilities, right? So you'd have to go use their utilities separately, right? And like that's not a great experience if you think about it. Like, okay, I have my dashboard here, and then I like do some transactions over here, and then I stake over here. And, you might really like the utility of that project, but do you want to like go refresh that page every day to like use that utility? Probably not. You probably just want that as a widget, in your wallet, right? And so that's where I think we're kind of trying to think about like, what really is going to be the best experience for people, right? It's probably not using individually the like hundreds of utilities that are coming out every day. You probably are just going to want one place where you get all the utilities, right? Like an app store, right? Yep. And so, yes, data aggregation is a big piece of that, right? But also like having the widgets and having the functionality embedded within one platform, it's just going to be easier for people to pick up, right? You don't necessarily even need to be part of that project to access it, depending on how projects want to collaborate with us. But we're looking at like all the utility across Solana, and we're thinking, if it makes sense to partner with those projects and bring that functionality into this all-in-one interface, then we're going to do that, because it's a better user experience. Fundamentally, we don't think that you're going to be trying to keep up with all the amount of tools being built and navigating them separately, right? We think that you're going to want to have one place where you can experience all of those things. And so I think that's sort of like directionally what we think is going to be valuable to the ecosystem broadly, and part of sort of our vision for the project.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of room for summarizing things in the Solana space, because I think that right now is one of the more difficult aspects of it. So many people are doing so many different things that sometimes it's difficult to even remember what you have access to and what you don't, and it's just like, where am I staking and how much am I getting? And, and there's so much like numbers that goes along with it that I feel like sometimes people are just lost, and you check your wallet sometimes and you got random ass coins in your wallet and you don't even know where that came from. And, it's just like, there's so much going on. And I think if that's you guys, if you're able to summarize that, I think there's a lot of room for people to use something like that, because right now it is a little bit of a clusterfuck, because it's a good problem to have where we have so many people innovating that there's constantly new functionality coming out, but it's difficult to even know, once again, like what you have access to, because there's nothing that's really summarizing it and bringing it all together.
That's right. I mean, currently the way you kind of discover utility on Solana, and I don't want to like step too into this word utility because I think it's overused, but currently the way you discover tools or things that you want to use on Solana is through Twitter.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
And like that isn't necessarily the best way to like discover what's going on the blockchain, right? You might want to know what one of your friends is doing without necessarily them having to post about it on Twitter. Or you might want to know what X, Y, and Z wallet protocol is using without them having to post. So it's almost like a discovery mechanism as well. And there's a big opportunity for summary, and the fact that Solana and other blockchains allow you to aggregate all this data, we all share the same backend, opens up that opportunity to have a unified experience where in Web 2 you couldn't have that.
So what would you say to people right now that are like, okay, well, so-and-so is building something that is a tool in Solana, and it's free right now.
Yeah.
So I don't need to buy a Solana Money Boy to have access to that. So how do you guys view continuing to give back to your holders to make it so that people feel like they need to buy the Solana Money Boy to have access to all of these features?
So what I would say is you'd buy the Solana Money Boy to get access to all the utility going on Solana generally, like as an index, right? Because we're working really hard to partner with as many projects as possible and really big, like a large platform for people. So you get the Solana Money Boy to have that unified experience where you're getting the best access to the utilities because we put in the labor to go find the best utilities, partner with them, or implement it ourselves as possible. We want to have that all-in-one experience that cannot be replicated. So that's why we don't index necessarily on like one thing, right? Because if we index on one thing, your argument's like very true, right? But if we have like the best wallet UX and the best design and the best experience, then we have like a platform for trying to work with other projects and implementing things where we think it makes sense. So that's why we kind of like index like broadly, right? Like it's not just like, okay, here's like how you track the floor price. It's like, here's you plug in your wallet and here's like the data for your entire wallet. And now we're branching out and trying to find as many utilities as possible to bring into this experience.
So it almost reminds me like you guys are trying to be like the Apple of Solana. And the reason why I say it like that is because to me, like every once in a while somebody will be like, oh, you should get like a, such and such, like a tablet that's not an iPad, right?
Yeah.
Or a phone that's not an iPhone, or a computer that's not a MacBook,
yeah.
and or a watch that's not an Apple Watch. And I'm like, nah, I'd just rather it all be, all like work together, right? Like
yeah.
if I'm going to have like, I love the fact that my text messages from my phone go to my computer, right? I love that I can watch something on my TV, on my Apple TV, and then I pull it up on my iPad and it's at the same point in time that I was watching it before, right? So you guys are essentially trying to make it so that your service that you're offering people is so clean and so simple and so easy to use and so all-encompassing that like, there's no way that somebody else could build something competitive, similar product, because what you're doing is so all-encompassing that, like, good luck with that. Like, you might have one feature that is similar, but you're not going to have all of the features. Is that what you're trying to say?
That's right. And that's one of the lucky things of being somewhat early in the space, is that nobody has done that yet. And I think it's just a matter of time before a team steps in and says, it doesn't make sense to like use 5 different utilities. Let's try to partner and bring this all into one encompassing, simple experience, right? And I think we're the team to do that. I really do. I think that like we have the sort of the developing talent and the community and sort of like the underlying passion within our project to actually build that, because we are users of that as well. But that's exactly right. Like, we don't think it's going to be like people competing to build tiny widgets. If anything, we want to offer a platform where developers and people who want to build on Solana want to first test that on our platform, because there's already an ecosystem of people using it. And so that's exactly right. Like, that's exactly the way I would put it. It's a summary of the utility that's going on Solana.
Okay. So when you guys were coming up with your the quantities for your collections, right?
Yeah.
How did you come up with those numbers? 444 and then the 2200 essentially for the other two.
There's nothing really special about how we came up with the numbers. It was we wanted to. So we started with 444, which is it's lower than what a lot of the big sort of blue chip projects out there have. Like most blue chips, they're kind of indexing around 10,000.
Yeah.
And we wanted to start a little smaller because we didn't necessarily want to have this like insane amount of hype right at the beginning. Lots of people, things are going crazy. Like, we always try to like incrementally improve. And so we always knew that we could have an opportunity to add more once we felt like we were ready to handle more. And so once we felt like, okay, like we have this collection, now we can offer some more value to our holders by expanding, because you can always increase the size of your collection, right? You can't necessarily decrease it as easily. And so I think it was actually really useful for us to start smaller in the numbers, because it gives you room for growth. And that's exactly what we did with our other collections. And now I think we're like at a good point where like this feels right to me and to the rest of the team. And you know, we get to diversify the art. We get to give specific utilities for specific NFTs. And so, you know, I think that right now we're at a good point with what the supply is. And I do like that the fact that we started low gave us room to grow.
What challenges would you say you guys have faced in building out what you're building right now? What have been some of the biggest challenges?
Yeah, I think the number one challenge in this space, if you're kind of operating an NFT project that has sort of some level of recognition, is how do you balance what needs to get done tomorrow and what needs to get done like 1 or 2 years from now? And that's really hard to balance because those two things are not always going to be the same. And what I think we've realized is the way you balance that is you basically just have a really, really high standard for the things that you put out. And then if it's not ready to put out, you do not put it out. So you like basically like chew off exactly what you can chew and that you feel comfortable delivering to your community. And I think like basically that's just a way to execute. If if you're like constrained by capital or your time, like slow down or chunk down exactly what you need to deliver, but make sure that everything that you deliver is the quality that you feel comfortable with, that you actually feel like represents what you want to build. And so I think that's how you balance the two things, but there's always going to be short-term pressure to deliver things tomorrow and the next day and the day after that, right? And so you have to have a plan for that. You can't just say like, oh, we're not going to deliver things for 2 years because by then it's too long.
Right.
So you got to have sort of a plan for breaking things down into like manageable pieces.
So how have you guys gone about building out your community then? Because obviously then your community becomes incredibly important because there's certain things that they have to be patient with you guys on, right? So how have you guys gone about building that community environment where they're going to be patient to allow you guys to build because building takes time?
I think it's pretty much one word, that's communication. You have to communicate exactly what you're trying to do and like the vision of your project. And while at the same time, making sure that you have things that are coming up that are going to excite and engage your holders, you know, a week or 2 weeks from now. And so I think that you just have to keep in mind that you're basically like running a process for like getting people hyped about what you're doing and also building something that's going to be really useful, you know, in the future. And there's no like perfect solution. I would say you just have to break things down.
Yeah, I mean, I think communication, obviously we talked about that before this too, is that communication is just so important because people want to know what you're doing. And I think the truth of it is that a lot of projects are figuring that out. But people want the transparency of knowing what you guys are doing because, you know, I think when you guys started off, you know, you said that when you guys first, you know, kind of built this, it was like, okay, we got to kind of figure out what we're doing now. Like we don't entirely know, like we got into it kind of wanting to create cool art, simple art and things like that. Yeah. But now we want to build out this, you know, these utility pieces that people are going to want to be a part of the Solana Money Boys because it gives you access to this really cool UI that just allows you to just do everything a little bit easier, right? And so with that, you go from, you know, mint date to coming up with this idea. Obviously there's a time period between that. And then once you have the idea, it's like, okay, that's a great idea, but it takes time to obviously build that, right?
Yeah.
And so the communication is the thing that keeps people from freaking the fuck out during a time like that, because I think a lot of times, you know, people are so used to things in a instantaneous environment of, okay, you talk about this Moneyplex and Moneyland and things like that. And it's like, okay, well, you know, the first time they heard that word, it's like, okay, so is that coming tomorrow? Like, you know, when is that coming? You know, so I think that's probably the number one thing is communication to keep people informed as to what you guys are doing, so that they can allow you to build, but also understanding both sides, right? Like they have expectations because they're seeing other projects that are making moves and doing things at a certain pace. And so then they want the communication from you of knowing what's going on and what you guys are building and where things are heading to make sure that they feel good about their investment.
That's right. And I think that the important piece is you do not want to lose track of the fact that, you know, what's going on in your NFT project is sort of a journey for everybody involved, right? And so if you just kind of piece out and say like, okay, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, like talk to us later, it's like, that's not going to work.
Right.
And like, you shouldn't do that, because what's the point then? But instead you say, we're building X, Y, and Z, and it's going to be a process and a journey, and our whole collection is going to go through that process, right? Like through every step that we take, there's going to be something for us to do together, right? And like that's how I think you basically marry the two things, and you create one of the best collections on Solana, right? It's like you go somewhere really valuable, but you do that with everybody involved in the project. And I mean, I think that's why some of these, like some of the best projects we're seeing in Solana have things that like people really want to do with their art upgrade, or, like trying a new utility, or trying like a new staking mechanism, or like transforming your NFT into something else. That's, or playing part in a certain story. That's like going through the journey of going somewhere useful and valuable together. And so that's why I think like you can marry both those things, because they're not mutually exclusive things. It's awesome that we get to do this together. Like that's the best part of it, and there's so much more value to be created if we can do this together. So these things are not like, they're not mutually exclusive in my opinion. I think that they work really well together. If you kind of create the steps that are needed for it.
So going back to the Moneyplex and Moneyland, I think one of the things that sometimes people get, the battle is how much do you let your holders know versus like, allowing yourself to just build. And so sometimes I think people talk in kind of broad terms, right? Yeah. And it's tough when people talk in broad terms sometimes, because they're like, I just want to fucking know like what's going on and what this is going to look like and what it's going to actually do and things like that. So yeah. I'm going to give you an opportunity here to drop some alpha. So what can we tell people about what they should expect with Moneyland and Moneyplex? And are there certain things that we can just let them know? Even if it's something we can say, hey, you got to be patient. It's going to take a second to get to this, but this is what it's going to look like. This is what it's, what they can expect.
Yeah, absolutely. So this, we haven't released this yet. This is going to be brand new alpha just for this pod. By the time, I don't know when this comes out, but this has not been stated yet. One of the key pieces of what we're building on Moneyland, we're partnering with Scum, who did the incredible art behind Dead Gods, is staking with art. So traditionally, you have your staking sort of as something that's completely done separately from the NFT project, right? It's like kind of just like this utility on the side, right? But that's sort of a missed opportunity. So we're introducing mansions that are going to be like real one-of-one art pieces for everybody to have. And if you have a family, you'll be able to stake it in those mansions. And there'll be sort of logistics around that, which I'm not going to drop just yet. But the point is, it's going to be an experience. Like it's going to be something that no other project has done before. And it's going to be based upon Moneyland, which is this map that Scum is building right now with different sections, different neighborhoods, our store. Our website is basically not going to look like a website. It's going to be like, holy, I don't know what this is, but this is like something I can engage with, interact with. And like you get to have a piece of that. And you get to have a piece of really, really good art that we'll probably be leaking some alpha on that soon. But yeah, so Moneyland, I think is going to be basically changing the game for like what it feels like to own a Solana Money Boy.
Okay.
You're going to be able to say like, I live here in this place and I'm staking my family here in this place. And there's going to be reasons to do that. I'm not going to drop that just yet, but yeah, it's going to be really exciting.
So when you say my family, I would assume that implies the three pieces of the three different collections, right?
Yeah.
Having one of each of those. I would assume that's what that means. I don't know if you're ready to drop that alpha.
So we didn't just do these 3 random collections. It's like, yeah. There's a reason why we did these 3 collections in the order that we did it. And there's going to be benefits to having, all 3 of those collections together. And there's going to be things that you can do when you have that together. But yeah, I mean, I would just say like something's coming. it's going to be sort of a unifying experience. Do what you will with that.
Fair.
Yeah.
Do you have anything that you can show me, and then I can kind of react to it, and we can just see?
Yeah, I don't have my computer on me right now. That's the only thing I was saying.
Damn.
You can cut this part, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have do you have your computer?
I
with
do,
you?
but it's back there.
Oh yeah, go grab your computer.
Okay, cool. All right, so this we're working on with Scum. It's a little bit earlier, just so you know.
Oh, that's fucking sweet.
Yeah.
Scum's so damn talented.
He is, man. It's really an honor to be able to work with him.
Oh, that's clean. I like that a lot.
Thank you. And I can also show you what's going on with Moneyplex, which is a little more further along, and something we'll actually be dropping pretty soon for our holders.
Yeah. Let's
All right, word.
I gotta make sure none of this shit pulls up on camera.
Yeah.
Oh, this looks crispy. This looks super crispy. Oh yeah. I'm a big fan. Oh yeah. Yeah, that looks cool as hell. So, am I able to describe it at all?
Yeah, what does it look like to you?
To me, it looks like you guys are building a social media platform, a Web3 social media platform.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fucking sweet. That's very cool.
You put it much better than I do.
That's a very, very cool. That looks incredible.
Yeah, so we're gonna have your wallet here. We'll have your profile. We'll be able to see, whatever you want to share there.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So the only people who will have access to that are people that have a Solana Money Boy?
Originally, yeah. So the only way you're going to get access to the Moneyplex at first is if you have one of our NFTs.
Okay.
And then there's a incremental rollout plan for adding other projects that want to be part of the Moneyplex. But holders will always have special access and special utilities involved in Moneyplex that other products will not have. So it will basically always be a premium version for our holders. And of course you can't, if you don't have our PFPs, you can't use Moneyland, period. Moneyplex, we want to build something massive, right? Like we want to build something that everyone's going to use. But if you have sort of the Money Boys, you get to be part of that early process, and you're always going to have special pieces to that other people will not have.
Is that, and we'll get into your tokenomics in a second, but
Yes,
is that linked in with your tokenomics where if somebody wants to have one or wants to have access to Moneyplex, but they don't have one of your NFTs, is there a way for them to just essentially buy your token and then use that token towards access to Moneyplex?
Yeah, absolutely. So you will need MBC to use Moneyplex. That's another thing I should state, is that our token is directly, the reason we have a utility token is so that you can use it to do things on our platform.
Okay.
Straight up, right? Like whether or not we're integrating a new widget from some project or you want to move a bunch of NFTs around, you're going to need MBC, right? And so if you have any one of our PFPs, then you're just going to be getting that automatically, right? Because you're staking it, you're earning it. But if you want to sort of engage with our ecosystem, you're going to need MBC. That's basically like the energy, the sort of like the way the electricity behind Moneyplex is MBC.
Okay. So let's talk, I guess, a little bit more about MBC. So for people that are, obviously the biggest thing when it comes to a token is creating demand for that token, right?
Yeah.
And so we've seen a lot of projects kind of do a lot of different things involving it. Some are using it as a way to get merch. Some are using it as a way to get access to certain things. Kind of what do you envision for your project? Let's say 6 months from now, a year from now, how do you envision your token being used?
Yeah, so we believe that when you use Moneyplex, you're going to want to keep using Moneyplex because your friends are using Moneyplex and it's just an easier way to use your wallet. And so that creates constant need for the coin, right? If you can only do X, Y, and Z on this platform with a coin, that coin is going to be in constant demand, right? And so that's sort of like the long-term plan with MBC is like, we're going to build something that hopefully tons of people are going to want to use. And that just creates like a bunch of desire for that coin for people outside your project, right? And so I think a lot of projects right now struggle with that, because it's like, if you're not building a platform, or if you're not building something that gives general utility to the ecosystem, you're only going to have people within your project, or people who want to get a little bit of exposure to your project, using your coin. And so I think that having a platform really empowers us to make MBC one of the most useful coins on Solana.
Yeah, I mean, I think tokenomics are one of the more interesting things that I can't say I completely understood until recently, and we've seen more projects that kind of done a good job of implementing their token, and it's a token that's now sought after, because I think that's one of the things that if you can create demand for your token, then your project has a super, super high ceiling, because if your token is not really needed, then there's no real reason to justify why somebody buys an NFT at a 24 versus a 2 floor, right? Like that's something that I think a lot of projects is a hurdle that a lot of projects have to overcome, is that if somebody bought into your project at a 2 floor, okay, it doesn't take much effort to buy a project at 2 floor, right? It takes a little bit more effort to buy at 20. It takes more effort to buy at 40, 60, 80, 100, and so on, right? So if your token is in such high demand, people can justify spending the higher amount of money. If your token's not really in high demand, it's a little bit more difficult to rationalize that. So that's one of the things that I think is the most interesting challenge for every project, is even when you roll out your token, you have to continue to innovate ways to make your token more sought after, because that, to me, is one of the highest correlating pieces. Is if your token is sought after, your pieces are going to be sought after, and so they go hand in hand together. But if you want your project to, because that's one of the battles that I face right now, having people on my podcast, is I'm having projects on my podcast, most of which I don't own, and so I'm thinking to myself, okay, can I justify putting $2,000 into this? Can I justify putting $6,000 into this, $10,000 into that? Can I justify that? And to me, it has to make financial sense. I have to think to myself, is this project going to 10x, right? Because people who have bought into your project have 10x, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not there. I'm at I'm at 0x, right? So I gotta figure out how to get to, is this project going to get to that, beyond 40? Are they going to get to 100? I think that's kind of the way I look at it now. So is this project going to be able to create enough demand for their token and enough demand for their product in general, that the floor has the ability to kind of go to the, sky is the limit sort of ways?
Yeah. Let me step back for a moment.
Yeah.
I think right now with tokens, basically what's going on is we're putting our trust in promises, right? It's like, this thing is going to get done, and people are going to use a token to do this thing, right? Copy and paste. And the day that some project, I'm not even saying it's going to be us, just saying some project, builds something where the token is in constant use, that's a game changer, right? Because now you can actually say, okay, it makes sense to ape into this project. You're not really aping it. I mean, I guess you're aping into that project because I believe in the platform, and like I believe in the value of the coin, and that's really cool. Like having a utility coin that does something productive for the ecosystem is undeniably going to do something great for your project, and I think that's really one of the cool things about building platforms, about building tools. Is what that does for your coin. It's like here's something that's actually has some real world value. So yeah, I couldn't agree more, and that's part of our vision. Why we have a coin, why we're building a platform. It all kind of comes together in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think NFTs is one of the greatest examples of economics of supply and demand, right? And if there's a limited supply and there's high demand, then the prices are going to skyrocket, and we all know that shit, right? Yeah. And so if your token is highly sought after, then your prices are going to go right along with that. And I think that's one of the most interesting challenges that a lot of these projects have, of how do we build that demand, because it is a really difficult thing, and it's, you have to continue to create more uses for your currency so that people are spending it in your ecosystem, right? And so that there is less circulating, and then because less is circulating, then the price is higher and yada yada yada, and so it creates more demand then for that person to just own a Solana Money Boy rather than buy the currency on an exchange or something along those lines, because it's at that point it's more cost effective for them to just own a Solana Money Boy, right? But that is a difficult thing to solve. And so that to me is the most interesting dilemma that every project has, is how do you create enough demand from the outside, and then how do you create demand from the inside to spend that currency instead of just liquidating it? I
mean, imagine how powerful that would be for a project, right? Yeah. If your coin is getting used on the daily and there's like inputs for people to sort of, press send on your coin to get something done that goes back into your ecosystem, that's an incredible lever for projects. That really is, if there's one place where you want to be as a project, in my mind, it's having an incredible desire for your coin, right? And to my mind, the best way to build that is to have a compelling platform for people to use. And because that ties in, that's like the glue between the PFP and the platform, right? And why we're we're focusing now on having a really good experience around staking and having the money land. We're investing in that because we know that that's going to be really valuable in the future. So, I mean, you put it great, and I think that when you have a platform that's being used and your coins in circulation, those are really good days for your project.
Yeah.
Those are solid days for your project. And I think that's part of our long-term vision of what we want to achieve.
Yeah, 100%. So how do you figure, coming up with more, I guess, let's say somebody's I don't really give a shit about the utility aspects of things, right? For those people, how do you create value for them when it comes to, is it coming up with ideas along the merch? And because to me, I'm looking at your merch right now, that shit looks clean as hell, right? So do you have interest in kind of expanding what the Solana Money Boy branding, kind of goes along with that, outside of just the utility pieces? If somebody's just a fan of the art in general, how do you create that, demand for that aspect of things?
I mean, absolutely. So our community, our project, our PFP, everything that is Solana Money Boys is the experience around building, right, and creating in this space. So we want to create the best environment for creators in Solana. And so, we want to build that experience in Moneyland. So there's something tangible, but it's also finding ways to collaborate with other projects. So one of the things that we're doing is we're building a job board within the Discord for people looking to hire for projects or get assistance with projects. And we're looking to partner with tons of one-on-one artists. Scum is just the first person that we've reached out to. We have more people in the pipeline that we're partnering with artists to really promote creators in our ecosystem. So yeah, we're building, Moneyland, we're building Moneyplex, but if you just want to be where the action is happening on Solana, where things are being built, day ones, there's going to be a lot of day ones in the Solana Money Boy Discord. There's already been a lot of day ones. There's been 2 projects that have launched in the Discord and now are already successful standalone projects. That's going to keep happening because we're attracting those kinds of people into our community. And so if you want to feel the thrill of creating things that people are going to be using or that people are going to be experiencing in the art world, that's the kind of community that we're building on the Solana Money Boys. So yeah, it's so much more. I think the utility and the sort of the things that we're building is sort of something to look, it's something to just be an example. But there's going to be a lot of other projects that come out of our Discord and that come out of the Solana Money Boys that holders get to experience. So yeah, if you're looking to just get involved on Solana, you're trying to figure out what's going on, who's doing what, I would say we're building hopefully one of the best communities for you to understand that. Right? And for you to participate in the ecosystem. That's one of our, our community managers are very passionate about that experience that we want to build for our holders.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, so with Solana Money Boys and Solana Money Girls and Solana Diamond Boys, how does that work with staking? Are each of those earning MBC, or how is that working? Can you drop me some alpha on that?
Yeah, so this might not be like we haven't announced this piece yet. There is an experience if you have all three together that you can now stake all three only if you have a mansion on Moneyland.
Okay.
And so this is part of why we're building art and integrating art into sort of Moneyland, is so that when you go and stake in your mansion, now you can stake all three and it's your own unique place. So we're kind of taking the idea of like an NFT and the art and integrating that with staking and integrating that with all three of our collections.
Okay. So currently right now they can only stake with a Solana Money Boy, right?
That's right.
Okay. So that is true alpha then for everybody who's holding a Solana Money Girl and a Solana Diamond Boy. If you have all three, that's going to be a huge benefit to you, it seems like, very soon.
That's right. Yeah. You know, and I think it makes sense because we want to make sure that every part of our project has benefits.
Yeah.
And so that's how we bring it all together. But you're right. That is alpha. Nobody knows that yet. So
there we go. There we go.
Sir.
We love dropping alpha on here. We love that.
Sir.
So, okay. So a question I have for you, and I was going to bring this up to you before the podcast. So when you guys were coming up with the name of Solana Money Boys, was there any worry of having the same acronym as Solana Monkey Business?
No worry. Actually, I like having the same acronym. I mean, we're SMB with a $sign.
Okay.
So that's the way I would put it. All right. There's only one SMB with a $sign. That's all I'm going to say. No, I think it rolls off the tongue easy. We obviously love Monkey Business. Great team. And no, I don't see any issue with that. You know, it was just, it was part of our brand. And so we rolled with it.
There we go. That makes perfect sense. So, okay, so now kind of pivoting a little bit into like the NFT space in general. What are, I guess, some of your biggest concerns with the NFT space?
I wouldn't say that I have like specific I think the biggest challenge that NFT projects have right now is how do you continue to deliver value to your holders past the hype stage? You know, like we want to see a growing and flourishing ecosystem 2 to 4 years from now. And so one of my sort of concerns is that, you know, a lot of what's going on the hype side is awesome. Like we got to build community. We got to get people involved. We got to get people engaged. I love it. We need this. But that's really step one. If you think about it, that's really only step one. And step two is now that we have this incredible platform, right? So many of these big projects, great platforms. You know, what do we do now? And most projects, frankly, most projects are just not thinking big enough, right? It's like, all right, I'm going to have, like you were talking about this, like the copy pasta, like you do, you know, you have like some airdrop and then, you know, and we're guilty of this too, you know, it's like, oh, you do this and you do that and everybody else has done that, right? But once you're already established project, once you've kind of done the foundational steps, where does it go to next? And that's where I really think that a lot of projects are going to start having challenges, which is like, what do we do with this? You know, and like, where does this go? Like, what do we want to be known for? And that's where you got to like really find your identity as a project and say, you know, like for people who are here for the hype stage, that's great. You know, like we love the hype stage. That really helps build a foundation. But why are people going to stay? You know, and like that's, you know, we were talking about this offline. Like, why are people going to, you know, once the hype happens, why are people going to stick around? And that's like a question that, frankly, I think all projects are thinking about and have to think about. You know, how do you make this continue to be valuable for even 10 years down the line?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the more interesting challenges. And it's one of the reasons why I like doing a podcast, because I like being able to say to somebody like, hey, congrats on getting from, you know, what did you guys mint for?
It was a range, anywhere between 0.75 to 1.25.
Okay, so I'll just say 1. So you guys essentially have 20x'd, right?
Yeah.
That's a fucking awesome accomplishment and job well done. But for everybody who's buying right now, they don't give a shit. They don't give a shit that you guys are 20x. They're looking from a 20x from here, right? So 400, right?
Exactly.
So what is going to happen in that project that's going to lead to that? And I think the fact that we can publicly say that now, because I think for a long time it almost looked at like, I feel like projects kind of look at their peak as like 20. You know, and now we're seeing projects that are doing massive numbers, and we're like, okay, we're seeing more projects doing that, because I think previous, especially when I got in, it was like Solana Monkey Business were doing big numbers. I think DJ Apes were doing really big numbers at the time, and then now we're seeing a lot more projects like Kets have blown the fuck up, D-Gods are blowing the fuck up, Soul Gods are blowing the fuck up, and so many projects are doing really well. Even when you got here today, you know, this is being released a week from now, so we'll see where the project is then. But OK Bears came out and it was 13th floor, like right off rip, right?
Yep.
So now we have these, we're having these conversations about what is that project going to do to continue having that floor go up, because it's not just going to continue to go up for no reason. Like there has to be something that you're doing, because there is so much competition in this space right now, and people are, they're taking funds out of one project and putting it into another. And so if a project is not, staying up and staying competitive and things like that, then they're going to drop down. And I think that's probably one of the more interesting things about the space right now is what are projects going to continue to do to continue to build demand and hype for their project, because it's like right now the competition is so steep in Solana, like it's nuts compared to every other blockchain. And like Ethereum, like I don't think they're doing anything close to what Solana's doing right now. And it's just because there's so much competition in Solana that you don't even have the ability to take a week off or a day off, let alone a week. You can't even take a day off because everybody is gunning so hard right now, and the competition is so steep right now that you'll get passed up in like 2 seconds if you get complacent.
100%. I might get killed for saying this, but if your project lives by the floor, it will die by the floor.
Yeah.
If you don't have something that's bigger than your floor price, like what's the point?
Right.
You might as well just give up, because you need to have something that, like, whether it's community, whether it's utility, whether it's whatever you want to be your project about, you need to have something that's bigger than your floor price.
Yeah.
Point blank.
Yeah.
It's like there's no like, I don't think there's any getting around that. So I couldn't agree with you more. And I think this is the point where sort of like some projects will cross that bridge and some projects will not cross that bridge. And you have to think, I mean, this is what I do when I think about projects is I look at the team and I say, like, does this team care about something deeper than like how the floor is doing right now?
Yeah.
And that's sort of the bet. Like, will they cross that chasm? Right. So yeah, it's going to be a crazy time. Like these next couple of months is going to be absolutely insane to see what happens and what survives, what doesn't. And it's incredibly competitive. The other thing is people think that like NFTs is like an easy way to potentially make a bag, right? It might have been. It's definitely getting harder, right? And it's definitely becoming more competitive. You certainly have people with really, really high talents and like incredibly skilled people entering this space and executing incredibly well. It's not easy. It shouldn't be easy. This is like a worldwide, somewhat like a worldwide sport in a way, where you have all these projects trying to compete to build something useful or to build an incredible project that gets known for like years, right? It's not going to be easy, and you're going to have to think hard about like what you want to be known for.
Yeah, and I think, one of the other examples of that is I think in the fall time, in like October, November, December, people were just throwing bags at projects, right? And projects were kind of just saying, okay, hey, thanks for the money, we're out, right? Yeah. Now we're saying like we demand transparency, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to dox yourself and things like that. Like obviously you're not doxed, no big deal, but we still need transparency. Right. We need to know if you guys are doing a capital raise by releasing another NFT collection and you're charging for that and whatnot. Like what are you doing with those funds? If you guys are doing what are you doing with people's money, right?
Yeah.
And I think that question people want to know now, and they're demanding an answer this time. And that's the part that I like about the ecosystem is it does feel like in certain ways we're maturing because like you are just buying a JPEG and technically nothing is nothing is guaranteed to you, but also it used to be that like if you did a project, you were guaranteed to sell out. Now it's like, no. Like you're not guaranteed shit. So if it has to, both things have to work together. Yes, technically the project never is guaranteeing you anything, but at the same time, like the holders and whatnot have the ability and should ask questions from people who are founding a project of, hey, so what are you guys planning on doing? And we need to know a little bit of transparency of where these funds are going. What are these royalties going to? And people should be asking those questions because, yes, technically could a project, give answers to that and still, rug and all that shit? Yeah, they could, but they're less likely if they actually have a thought out game plan, And I think that's what we're seeing now is that people want that thought out game plan. They want to know what's going on. I mean, to give Soul Gods credit, when I read their flow paper, it was one of the most beautifully written things I've ever read. Like, it was so incredibly well done, and I'm not in that project, but or at least not as of according to taping of this. I want to get one, damn it. But the flow paper was so well done that everybody who is founding a project should read that damn flow paper and see how well things should be, like the standard to which things should be held to, because we should be upping the standard. If we want Solana to get taken seriously, and I truly believe Solana at this point could overtake Ethereum in terms of the NFT market and whatnot.
Yeah.
If we continue to uphold standards and keep our standards high and not allow bullshit rugs and things like that. So keep our questions coming, keep our standards high, and keep building things and innovating in ways that other blockchains aren't doing. And that's what's going to keep Solana relevant. That's what's going to keep projects doing well. And that's what's going to keep the shit super, super fun for all of us.
Absolutely. I think at the end of the day, like the projects that are going to be mooning are going to be the ones with the teams that deliver the most value, right? And that's what we want, right? We want projects that are like actually mind blowing in terms of like what they do for their holders, what it means to be part of that project. And that's really good. And it's just going to be like, it's going to get harder and harder, and it's just going to get better and better, because making it harder for projects means that projects have to deliver more. And that means it's way more exciting to be part of these projects. So as an NFT holder myself, I'm super bullish on the fact that it's getting harder.
Yeah.
And I think that that's going to be really, really good for our ecosystem. And having a higher standard on Solana for NFT projects, even though the floor price is lower, is really long-term bullish for the ecosystem.
Yeah. I mean, our standards should be high. Like, we're giving people our money. At the end of the day, Everybody who's spending their money right now on NFTs, you busted your ass to make that money. Yeah. You should demand excellence and demand high quality and high standards and things like that, because otherwise you're literally just throwing your money away. So, like, I think we can do better than that of just, like, we were throwing our money away. I mean, I've said before in other podcasts, I just said it on Soul Gods, that my first project I ever minted was a pixelated dick. I mean, that was so beyond stupid in hindsight, but like, I'm glad our standards have increased. And some people are probably watching this right now and they're like, hey, my standards were never this low. Okay, Mark's a fucking idiot.
Hey, you never know with the pixelated dicks.
You never know.
You never know.
It was the project that came out right after Solstead's.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
I had Solstead's FOMO. I went into that. It was an epic failure. It is what it is. But that's the thing. Our standards should continue to go up, because I think sometimes we look at things and we're like, well, that's, it's only one Solana. And it's like, yeah, one Solana buys you a nice ass dinner somewhere. So like maybe make sure you're spending on some high quality shit, right? Yeah. And I think that's the good thing about what we're building right now, is that the community standards and the excellence that we expect is continuing to go up, and that's what's going to keep Solana relevant. That's what's going to keep NFTs doing well, is having that high standard and instead of just accepting bullshit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just going to organically go in that direction, right? The best projects are going to be the ones that execute the best.
100%.
And so the FOMO, I think, in the year from now isn't going to be like, oh, I didn't mint a pixelated dick. It's going to be like, I didn't bet on the best team in the space.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be.
Yeah. So, all right. So a few more questions for you just about the Solana space in general. Yeah. How much do you pay attention to what other projects are doing, whether it's super successful, not so successful? How much do you pay attention to them?
I think we do pay attention, and it's not because we necessarily like need to know what every project is doing, but every project is running their own experiment, and you can learn from other projects. there's some really, really, really useful things that you can sort of like glean from other projects if you're just aware of what they're doing, right? Because they're almost running an experiment for you. So I do look at other projects. At the same time, you have to balance that with knowing what you want to do. So some projects, I think maybe they just like basically look at what the best project's doing and saying, well, let's just do that. And I think that ultimately is a losing strategy. So it's a balance between those two things, seeing what's working and then doubling down on like what your vision is for the project and integrating that.
Yeah. I think it's a smart thing to pay attention to what other people are doing, just as I pay attention to like what other podcasts are doing and things like that. Like I literally just typed in Solana Money Boys on YouTube last night and was like, let me just see what other people are talking about. Let me see if they had some good questions that they brought up or good aspects of the project that I didn't know about. But I think it's important to pay attention to what other people are doing to see if there are things that you feel like you could improve upon, to see how certain things play out in the market, and then just to learn from it. We should always be learning. I mean, that's just life in general, like never stop learning. So, I think it's important to, to pay attention to what's going on around you, and not just in the NFT space, but in everything, paying attention to what's going on in the crypto world, paying attention to what's going on in the investment and stock world, what's going on in everything, and just see if there's different ways that you can pivot what you're doing based off how the market is kind of moving. It's just like, in life in general is constantly evolving. The world's constantly evolving. And if we can find ways to learn from that, then we can pivot what we're doing to work with that.
Right. Yeah. No, you got to take data in and you got to use that data. You just got to know how to use it. You can't just like copy what other projects are doing. That's just not going to work. You got to find your niche.
100%. So if you could have anybody join the Solana Money Boys right now, is there a celebrity or somebody in mind that you're like, it would be, this person fits like what Solana Money Boys are all about, and we love to see this person a part of our project?
Anybody? I mean, we're talking about anybody. I mean, I would...
Let's say somebody alive, okay?
Okay, all right. Somebody alive. I would take the person who just took over Twitter the other day.
There we go. Elon Musk. Okay, yeah.
I think, basically I would look at sort of like some of the best innovators and entrepreneurs of our time. And I think he would probably be one of those people that I sort of look up to. You're operating in a completely new space. You're trying to do new things. You need to have a systematic process. And so I look up to people, of that mold.
I'll say this, I could definitely see Elon at some time talking about NFTs and like a project that he bought into or something like that. And the moment he says, I bought into such and such project, holy shit, would that go nuclear?
So funny story, we actually made him a 1-of-1. And I'm not sure if he saw it, but it got like picked up like crazy for some reason. It was a long time ago. We made him a 1-of-1. So who knows? Maybe one day he'll see it. But I'm just that's the moonshot,
Yeah. Hey, you got to take moonshots to make a moonshot,
absolutely.
So I respect that. Is there anything about the Solana space that you'd like to see change, or maybe on the community aspect of things? Because I do think one of my biggest gripes is all the time we see people say like, this project is going to pass up this project in floor price. And I'm like, dude, that is not productive. All it does is cause both sides to go, well, fuck you, our project's better because of this, right? And I don't think that's helpful. So, what are your thoughts on the community aspect of things? How can we help people, I guess, understand that we just need more liquidity in the space? Like, we don't necessarily need another project to die for our project to do well. We just need more liquidity in the space, which means making NFTs more approachable and onboarding your friends and things like that. Do you have any thoughts on that as a whole?
Yeah, so basically I think what it boils down to is zero-sum mentality versus not zero-sum mentality. And if you have a zero-sum mentality, if you think liquidity is limited in this market, then you're going to constantly be looking at what other projects are doing and think that if another project moons, it's bad for your project. I try to have the opposite mentality. I think that when projects do well in our space and they're actually killing it, that's good for every other project in our space. And also, by the way, I think the opposite as well. So if one project rugs, I think that's bad for everybody in the space. So I would just like remind people that if another project moons and you're not holding it and they're killing it in the space, like we're all on Solana relatively early. Like I would say we're still kind of in the early adopter phase of Solana. Seeing other projects do well is likely going to be good for your project, and just try to find the best teams and see if you can partner with projects as well. Like there's been in our community, there's been projects that joint holders come together and create discords from other projects and Solana Money Boys. And that's kind of the mentality that I think is really productive, because it's a win-win situation for everybody. We're all still, I would say, relatively early. It's fair to say that. And so let's have like a positive sum mentality.
I agree. Is there anything in real life that you'd like to see Solana Money Boys integrate with? Like, obviously, you guys are doing a lot in terms of utility for the Web3 community and things like that. Is there anything where you're like, in a perfect world, I'd love to see Solana Money Boys taking a role in this in real life?
Yeah. So about a month ago, we started playing around with Solana Pay, and we got to sort of see firsthand the power of that technology. And I'm super bullish on Solana Pay and generally payments and crypto being on Solana. It's incredibly powerful for merchants if you can pay with Solana, because there isn't an intermediary. So instead of like going to your coffee shop and every time you pay for coffee, there's like 3% to like a third party, you can actually spend the whole entire cup of coffee on that coffee shop and support them directly via Solana Pay. And so I would love it if people like used Moneyplex to see what was going on in their wallet and to use their wallet, and then that integrated with Solana Pay, and you could use the Moneyplex to buy coffee or do other things. I mean, that's going to be a huge push for merchants to adopt it. But from what I can tell, merchants are super excited to adopt Solana Pay, because it's a novel technology that helps them get more from every purchase. So if we can create like a really great user experience, for merchants, for users, I think Solana Pay has tons of potential, and it's like the kind of thing that you could integrate directly with our platform.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this as a co-founder of Roast Umber Coffee, is that we would love to come up with a way for people to not only buy our coffee with Solana, but also for people to buy with tokens that they've received from their collections. If the tokens have enough of a value, then we'd have to find a way to make sure that there's a way of seeing what the live value is and whatnot. But we would love to make it like we want to integrate with Web3 as much as we possibly can. Right. Obviously, like I'm deep into Web3, so are my business partners and whatnot. And so we're trying to do everything that we can to make Roast Umber like a Web3 brand and to integrate with people who are doing super, super cool things. So I'll say that, like, if anybody has any ideas of like different ways that we can integrate, like we're trying to do that. Like,
yeah. Absolutely. And I think that there's going to be more apps that come out to help entrepreneurs and business owners integrate with Solana Pay. I do think that experience is going to get super smooth, hopefully soon. And just be aware also that like Solana Pay integrates with all SPL tokens. So you could accept USDC for that cup of coffee or for that brand. And so it's, you could accept Dust, or you could accept MBC. Using Solana Pay. And
that's what we would like to do. Like our perfect world, like that's the thing that we're trying to build, because we know if that can happen, like then the sky is the limit of like what can happen in the Web3 world and whatnot. So that's what we would love to make happen. And so I think that is, probably in the next like 6 months going to be possible. And we just want to be one of the first brands to do that. So
yeah, I mean, let's make it a goal. If people can pay for Umber using
Roast Umber
using MBC, that'd be hype. Let's try to get that to work. Let's make it happen, man.
Let's make that shit happen.
All right,
also,
sweet. Let's go.
You have to give me, because obviously right now you can't do a live taste test because you got a mask on. But you did try Roast Umber before we started the podcast, so give me your honest thoughts on it.
All right, I'll give you my honest thoughts, but before I give you my honest thoughts, I need to tell you that I'm a caffeine addict. Okay? I drink like 4 cups of coffee a day, or 5. And so I would say that it's actually good coffee. You know what I mean? And I'm not just saying that as somebody who drinks coffee occasionally. I drink coffee all the time. Like I have a very high bar for my coffee, and that was fire. I mean, I usually only do like hot brewed coffee.
Yeah.
And, I've been kind of starting to transition to like not hot brewed coffee because it's more convenient, right? Yeah. Like you have to go and like do the whole thing every time. And so this is actually something that I would like use on a daily basis.
There we go. I mean, that's the whole point of why we made it, because we wanted to have something super accessible for people where we can control your experience, right? Like you asked me earlier, you said something about how you like the coffee, and then, and I said to you like, well, I already know that, because I'm confident that when I give somebody our coffee that like they're going to love it, because I know how much effort our team put into making sure it's the best cup of coffee possible. And so, I mean, anybody who wants to try it out. I know I said it at the beginning of the podcast because I have a little video that plays at the beginning. But they can use the coupon code Marc30 and they'll get 30% off their order. So
let's go.
But yeah, no, I mean that's our goal. Just as like you're trying to make the dopest Solana project possible, like we're trying to make the dopest coffee product possible. And so,
let's bring those two things together, man.
Hell yeah.
Let's do it.
That's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
So we'll brainstorm off camera and let's get some shit going. But so all right, so last question for you, a little food for thought question.
Yeah.
What can you do today that you were not capable of a year ago? Think about that for a second. What can you do today that you were not capable of a year ago?
You're talking about me individually or as a project?
You individually as a person.
Today, I can basically reach a community of people in a genuine, like, in a way that makes them feel like they're part of what we're collectively building, in a way that if I tried to, create a project a year ago, would have been absolutely impossible. And collaborative work around missions is something that NFTs have enabled on a radically new scale that we've never seen before. And it's not just about having like a JPEG. I think everybody knows that it's not that anymore.
Yeah.
It's about actually feeling like you're part of something. And that was just never possible before.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the... I'd never used Twitter really before I got into NFTs. And like now, like I think I just hit 5,000 followers on Twitter. And like, it's so cool to see like Instagram to me is dead in so many ways. Like people just don't interact with shit. Like it's just not like how it used to be.
Try.
And Twitter, man, like Twitter people, they're on it. They're talking about shit. They're, I love when people are just doing the good morning chains and the good night chains and stuff like that. Like people are so lively on Twitter, and I love to see it. And I think it's one of the coolest ways that we've seen like so many people. I mean, I've spent like an hour on the phone with people that I'm like, I have no idea what you look like. I really don't know anything about you. I know your random ass username that you use, and like that, that's it. And it's cool to just like have these really random interactions that are so positive and so just awesome. And so we just have to keep the good vibes going in Solana. And that's the thing that I guess I want to push with the podcast and whatnot is like, I'm not just having projects on that I have, I have one of them. And so I'm pumping my bags and whatnot. I'm trying to bring founders on, give them a voice, give them the ability to speak and bring the whole community together because each project doing well. I said this to you before we got on the podcast, but we need projects to hit 1,000 floor to really have the Solana space being taken super, super serious. Yeah. But we need multiple projects. Yeah. We need Monkey Business hitting that. We need you guys hitting that. We need D-Gods hitting that. We need, or I'm going to get killed for that, D-Gods hitting that. We need Soul Gods hitting that. Like, we need a bunch of projects hitting that. We need Kets. We need all these projects hitting that because that's really good for the space to see, projects killing it and sustaining a success, right? So that's what I'm trying to build with this is just positivity and just, and good vibes and keep that shit going. And, I hope other people are watching this and they learn something from it. I hope, I hope it's a positive experience for everybody. And that's what, we're trying to fucking do. Let's just like...
Yeah, exactly. There's so much life behind these projects.
Yeah.
There's so much energy behind these projects. There's so much passion, like just human passion behind these projects. It's like a range of emotion that it's like surprising that you can have online. And to feel like you're actually like, collaborating with people in this like digital dimension that's like becoming increasingly rich. It's really interesting, and like this podcast is basically a spillover effect of all the energy that's going on in this space.
Yeah.
Right. It's spillover effect. And there's just so much like human just thought and like energy going into this. It's incredible. It really is incredible. And it has so many of the ingredients of being able to create something that's useful and new for people. So I'm super excited. And I'm really grateful to be operating in this space. I wouldn't trade it for anything. This is the best space straight up to operate in. The amount of people that you're able to meet, the connections that you make with potentially totally online strangers. Then sometimes it becomes real life, which is awesome. It is really incredible. So yeah, it's a great time to be alive in this space.
Yeah, fuck yeah, dude. Completely agree. So, all right. So, last thing, is there anything you want to leave people with? Any last thoughts? Any last alpha? Anything at all that you'd like to leave people with?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I just want to say that it's been an incredible journey thus far with our holders, right? And I think that really what we're seeing right now at the Solana Money Boys, and potentially even just space generally, is sort of that tip of the iceberg, right? You have projects that now have incredible foundations and incredible talent and, really long-term vision. And I just want to say that our team is going to keep working exactly like we did on day one to continue adding value to our community as best as we can. And we're probably going to make mistakes, like everybody makes mistakes, and, we'll dust ourselves off and we'll keep going, and so I'm just like incredibly grateful that you guys are part of this journey this early, and that, that you're part of this vision that we're trying to build. And, it's been an honor, and I can't wait for like the next couple of weeks, because this really feels like, it's so cliche to say, but we're really just getting started.
Let's go. Let's go. Awesome, man. Well, hey, where can plug your socials? Where can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me at Moneyboy0x. You can find the Solana Money Boys at Solana Money Boys, all on Twitter. Hop in the Discord, say hello. We got a community. We'll show you love. So yeah, come check us out.
There we go. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you for coming out. I know you had a long journey to get here, so thank you for doing it, and glad we had this conversation. I'm looking forward to the next few months because it's going to be really fun. So, yeah, thank you again, and we'll see you guys soon.
Absolutely. Pleasure being here.
There we go. Marc. See you guys.